Thank you very much. And I must say that for someone with a degree in history and literature, how much I just learned. I mean, I did not know that fish had an aesthetic sense. But it's fascinating what you can do also with these artificial reef and 3D printing inspired by Gaudí and Sagrada Familia. But I also thought that is exactly the mindset and the thinking out of the box to take innovation to a total new level. That's exactly what is so much needed. And I've been asked to try to say, what are the barriers? How can we sort of speed up innovation? How can we speed up sort of front-runner positions? But just to, I know, like Ida just was referring to, all of us know that we have a problem. If in doubt, look what you have seen with climate-related events over this last summer, what we see at the Rhine, at Po and Yangtze in China, in the Nile in Egypt with forest fires, all sorts of things. But instead of a long speech about that, I brought a small movie that I hope that our technical experts will now start. And you can see that it is starting here at 1880. And what you see there is the temperatures as they have been measured on numerous weather stations around the planet. And I just think that they tell more than so many words. Why is it we have something we need to look much more substantially into? Where it gets blue and white, there the temperatures get colder. Where it's yellow, red, and orange, it gets warmer. And you can say it runs in some natural variations. But then try and have a look at how recent decades have developed. And I think that explains why the scientists warn us as much and as seriously and as strongly as they do. For good reasons, it stops in 2021, the last year that we have full sort of numbers for. But I think that this shows why we have a challenge. You can see hot areas becoming even hotter, very populous areas becoming very much challenged. And you know from your news media that it's not theory any longer, it has implications. Climate change has implications in all sorts of parts of the world already by now. We are talking about a lot about climate change, but what this also shows is it's a world where we will become still more people. According to the UN, this year, November 15, we will surpass the threshold to 8 billion people on planet Earth. 8 billion people all wanting cooling and heating and food and mobility and modern commodities and what have we. So, in my view, this does not only sort of spell climate change, although that is what it shows, but it's also illustrating that what we are in for will be severe challenges when it comes to water, when it comes to biodiversity, which was already mentioned, materials, material consumption, resource consumption. It's all of that that we are really need to address, and we need to address it urgently. Some people, when they see this movie, say, okay, and they hear about, yeah, we are becoming more people. When my people will be my age, we are 10 billion people on planet Earth. And even some scientists now say, but it's too late. Now we must just sort of, we are in the end game, as they say, now we must just adapt. We cannot really cope with the challenge, we must just adapt. Some say that. Others say, no, we must stop growth. Stop growth? In a world with still more people, 3 billion people to be living in Africa and not having modern commodities yet? Do we really believe that they will have, that in democracies that people will say, yes, let's stop growth? Whether we like it or not going to happen. So in my view, what this is about is to say, how can we create the growth that we need in a much more sustainable, much more smart, much more resource efficient, and much more energy efficient manner. So that is what people the world is slowly realizing. In 2015, as you know, we had the international agreement on climate change, the Paris Agreement, but we also had the agreement on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the global goals. Those two agreements saying we need to develop in a different manner. We cannot solve one challenge at a time, poverty, food production, energy, and then one day we can get to sustainability. No, we have to think across silos. We have to find smarter solutions. We have to find more efficient ways and more sustainable manners to create the growth that we need. The good thing is that the green transition in energy is happening in our part of the world. In Europe now, due to the war in Ukraine, things are hopefully accelerating when it comes to transitioning and transforming our energy systems. But it's not just in Europe. The world is awakening. Look at the buses, the electric buses. Some of them are now starting to drive around in Copenhagen. Where do they come from? Well, look at the back of the buses. It says BYD. That is the big Chinese bus manufacturer. So the world is starting to reckon that we really need to do things. And when you make these two international deals back in 2015, it takes some time until change trickles down the systems. But actually then today you see that more than 140 countries have made national climate plans. You cannot find a mayor today that will not know his or her cities or regions' sustainability plans. Today it's Chefsache, it's top level that takes care of that. You can see big business really changing the way they think about sustainability. The big areas, the big companies, take cars as an example. You could take IKEA, you could take Maersk and the way they are ordering new ships. You could take company after company after company among the big ones. They get this. And the good thing is that investors also start to put up other kind of demands, other kind of requirements, and they want to measure, is this investment, is that green, or is it business as usual, is it more of the same? You will start to face much more critical questions from your bank or your investor when you want to have financed a project if you're a business. All that said, you can say that is good then. Okay, the world is moving, we are getting there. And then the problem is that, yes, the world is moving, but not nearly as fast as we need to move. So that's the question now. How can we speed up the innovation? How can we speed up the transformation needed? And I'll just come up with some suggestions. Of course, it means something that targets have been set. In Denmark, in Scandinavia, and Europe, targets have been set. Check with that. A price signal is absolutely key. The Danes in the room will know that just before summer recess in Denmark, there was a very broad agreement between the different parties that now we should have an increased CO2 tax, and we already have an European emissions, price on emissions, that's good. But we still have areas where it does not kick in because politicians have not agreed so far, for instance, for agriculture. So there's still more to do there. And our taxation system does not consequently enough reward those who are investing green instead of those who are continuing business as usual. But we are getting there. The green energy I already mentioned. It's absolutely imperative that we think about our energy systems and the way we do that. And here, in an odd and cruel manner, Putin has helped pushing things and decisions forward. But we also need a smarter public sector. We need smarter planning. We need faster permitting. There are so many good ideas out there, but I think that also in your daily work, now and then you run into obstacles. You run into, you cannot do this, we know we should be doing that, but this is not allowed, or here there is an outdated legislation. I think here we really need to look through our regulations and our standards and use them as a tool to accelerate our innovation, accelerate the way we not only identify new solutions, but also are capable of bringing new solutions to scale. One way of doing that could be through public procurement. I mean, the public sector in this country, but in many countries, is really a substantial part when it comes to setting standards and pulling new innovative products and ways of doing things faster into the market. Here, the public sector could really make a difference, also by making the public spending used in a much more strategic manner to pull new innovative products faster to the market. I also think that public-private partnership will be more needed than ever. I know that in Denmark, we claim to be, the best in the world almost. So many things we claim, also when we are not there, but we are really good at working together, the public and the private sector. But I think we need to do that even more systematically, because the knowledge on what to do is out there with the business, with the companies, and those who sort of need to take care that the framework is in place will be the policymakers. So in order to speed up innovation, we need to have the public and the private sector to sit much more systematically together and together create the right framework. Having said that, I would also say, if you're a company and you sit there and you think, it's strange, I run into this obstacle or that obstacle, or why don't they do this or that, the policymakers or the regulators in the EU? Why wait? What are you waiting for? Why not just get started and then try and impact the way that the regulation will be done? I also think that even more could be achieved faster if we were better to cooperate business and the knowledge institutions. There are so many good things happening at the universities, and all universities are trying to be better at reaching out to the business community, but they do not always know where the good solutions in business are, or where business really need their help and their science and their knowledge. So I would also say that sometimes I think it would be helpful if business, I'm not talking about the big ones, they will know their way through the systems, but also the SMVs were better at asking for help with our laboratories, our technological frontrunners at the universities. And then we should be much better at using data, using digitalization, but also sharing it. And I must say that now in preparation for this, although that I'm not going to tell you anything about additive manufacturing, but to read about it, it is absolutely fascinating how big a potential there is if we really can use these options and get them to scale faster than we normally do. I think one thing that is extremely useful there is you could help the policymakers, particularly in a democratic society, politicians who want to think more and act more for the long term, they need to be supported. They need the support of the citizens. That is difficult these times. We're in for inflation, we're in for increased energy prices, we are in war times. It's difficult. But it would help them to have the backing of the people they represent. If more business people focused more on bringing the solutions out there, making the solutions visible. Because as we just heard before, there are so many attractive solutions. Why not make them even more visible, and by that pave the way for more bold political action? And final point, I also think we have a challenge with our competences, with our education systems. Not only to take care that the people that we need is there, but also to take care that sustainability is sought from the design phase, in the development phase, in the implementation phase in a much more sort of continuous way and basic way than is often the case today. As said, I think you will feel more and more demands coming there also from the financing sector, ESG, environmental, social governance targets. That will be the norm. You will have to sort of show what are you doing, what is your product, what is it helping for, what is the environmental impact of using that product. But one of my hobby horses these days it is extremely difficult for all of us, I guess also for you, to handle both the transformation that we need, the complexity we are living in, and the accelerated action that we need. So I think that in order to do that better, we must not be so shy or not so scared of making mistakes. Failures will happen now and then. And I really also think that this old paradigm that we should not pick winners is wrong. Don't get me wrong there. It's not that I say that politicians should sit there and say which technology should move forward, which not, obviously not. But I think that in an economy, in a country, you cannot be world champion in everything. So you have to pick some areas where you really decide that here we want to be front runners, and then you do whatever you can to push that and enable that is actually feasible. Wrapping up, I would say all the best with what you're already doing. There is so much need for the kind of smarter solutions that the companies you represent can offer. I also think we will need new business models. We will have to move to a much more circular economy, get rid of the old linear way of thinking. And I think that we need a new culture in our workspace so that all of us, all people in the company will think about sustainability. It must be incorporated in everything we do. If you want to be a front runner, then you cannot wait for sort of the big middle group to follow you. Someone has to take the lead. I showed you that movie in the beginning because there you can see the acceleration of the challenges we are faced with. But as the rest of the world is starting to understand that this is serious, this is costly in economic terms and in human terms, then more and more economies and people and countries and cities will demand new kind of innovative solutions. And those who have already the front leading position, you have a lot of potential to stay there, not the least in a time where many people are starting also to look at value chains must come closer to home. In light of the war, in light of the relationship between US and China, there is a lot of talk about reshoring. I think that what additive manufacturing can offer, that fits exactly with what 5-10 years down the road will be very, very much in high demand. So all the best. I understand that there are still some frameworks that could be improved, but I think that one of the ways you can help accelerate things despite doing what you're already doing, offering the solutions, is also to making these creative, exciting solutions visible so that more people say, okay, it's a dire movie there, but the future, the kind of growth we need for the future, can also deliver attractive solutions that we want to be part of. So all the best with your continued efforts. Thank you.